I would like to start as far back as you're comfortable,
Yeah.
and talk about, yeah, where you grew up, what your childhood was like.
So I was like a 1980s child of divorce. It's like a very specific thing. I was like flying on airplanes by myself between my parents' houses when I was 3, which is technically illegal.
Yeah.
So I was quite independent. And yeah, so I lived kind of all over the place. My mom moved around a lot as a single mom when I was little. And my dad also was moving for business with my stepmom. And so I had these kind of like two different households and different states. And um, I still am somebody that sort of gets wanderlust and wants to move around a lot because of that, I think. But yeah, I was a weird kid.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, I don't think that's like really unusual for writers.
Horror writers, people who write horror specifically as well. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, and I'm a mother now, and I have to say, like, when I meet kids that aren't weird, they kind of freak me out. Like, th I find that normal children unsettling. Like, what's going on here?
I get you.
So
Yeah.
it's my people, and my
Yeah.
kids
Yeah.
are definitely not normal. Bless.
Yeah.
Uh, but I had a rich inner life, let's say. I had that
Mm.
very, very vivid imagination to the extent of it sort of coloring not to the extent of beautiful creatures. I wasn't murderous,
Yeah. Yeah.
but like sort of overlay of the fantasy world over my day-to-day humdrum existence. And I sort of illustrated my life to a large degree whenever I would get bored. Um, and that worked really well. And like when I lived in New York City, because all my friends were children of creative people and that sort of
Yeah.
thing on the upper side. And then when I moved to the suburbs when I was 8, it did not fly.
No.
There was a lot of normal children.
Yeah.
Um, and I was really badly bullied for several years. And then of course, when you're sort of friendless in a
Mm.
day-to-day setting, you tend to retreat and become even more interior and sort of build up that inner life even more. So, I mean, that's probably what made me a writer. Although at the time I wanted to be an actress.
Yeah.
Um,
But it's all forms of play, isn't it? Ultimately,
yeah.
like it's just, but it's also, well, I guess it's interesting because writers, yeah, often do have very vivid imaginations as a kind of coping strategy, mechanism, whatever. And not just writers, a lot of people do, and also acting as well as a chance to kind of get outside yourself. And do you think, at what point did your this kind of really strong imagination, like you said, that you were kind of superimposing over your day to day life, like what kind of age did that come in? I mean, I know it's hard to remember exactly, but did people comment on it? Was it like super obvious that you were quite a kind of,
Yeah, my mom tells this story about how she would play make believe with me at bedtime. And she was up on the bed and we're in a boat and she said, "Oh, then there's sharks out there." And then she's like, okay, let's wrap it up. And she gave me a kiss and she stepped off the bed and I screamed. And I was like, "Yeah." I mean, I believed it completely.
yeah,
Um, which
yeah,
I don't know how healthy that was, but yeah, so I think it was there from the beginning. And I think I kind of mourn it a little bit that
yeah,
I mean I use it in my job, but I miss the level of whimsy that I had in my childhood. Like
yeah,
I would love to, and I get it sometimes, but I have to be in a very particular mindset. Like when I'm walking the dog and you can sort of see
mm,
the specks of light and go, those are pixies. Well,
yeah.
this is the veil between the worlds, and
Well,
you just
what
have to.
about your children? Do you get to experience their whimsy and enjoy that?
Yes, but they are both boy children. They are 10 and 12.
Mm,
And I am the most embarrassing person in the world. The thing is, they're not wrong. I have very little filter. I mean, this is like part of my acting training. I was like
so you trained
the
as an actor. You trained as an
Yeah,
actor.
so I went to NYU. I went to like conservatory and
Oh
have
wow.
a degree in drama. But my jobs were not like they weren't good. Like I was a corpse on Criminal Minds. I was a like these Snapple ads with like a Carmen Miranda fruit hat. Like I only did like the most embarrassing
That's
stuff.
so funny.
So once you've done that kind of thing, you really you don't get that embarrassed by normal things anymore. But my kids sure do. So I have
Yeah.
to. I got to kind of dial it back for them.
No, they'll appreciate it when they're older, I think.
Oh yeah.
You know, you want a
I tell
charismatic,
them now.
exactly, a charismatic parent, because you know when you meet parents and they're so bored, like they get to an age and it's like had their children, and you just see where's the life. Like, and I think that's the thing of like you saying like
Right.
missing that whimsy and that kind of playfulness, which obviously came to you so much and does just get, let's be honest, beaten out of you by life as you grow older, because it's harder to be so. I mean, it's weird to call being in a state of imaginary or imaginative play as being present, but it's like you don't have like it is, but it's allowing your mind time for your mind to just drift, isn't it? And life,
Mm-hmm.
I guess it doesn't allow that very often.
The daydream time. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that that is what it is. And even with writing, I'm gonna have to schedule it in because I've had a few months here where it's been back to back to back deadlines, and just when I
Mm.
think like I have a little space, the next I will forget that the next round is coming in. My editors had one book, and this is a
Yeah.
really good problem to have, but
Yeah.
at the same time, I'm really looking forward to having a period of, just looking at the sky
Yeah.
and like having space
Mm.
to imagine things that are not, for the purpose of my job, that are just free form.
So,
Because I
yeah, you know, and I think that's a very good, but I mean, it's completely understandable why you don't have time for that. And you're a parent and, you know, it's hectic. But so you say that you were weird and you obviously, yeah, very
bad at
imaginative.
sports.
Yeah. Yeah. And you were bullied. Did you say you
Mhm.
were bullied for quite a long time? Did you
It
just,
was so I moved in third grade,
yeah.
and it was like pretty much from the beginning.
Why?
I went around the field looking for fairies at lunch break, and that was just
Okay. I just said why, but knowing children, if someone does that, you put a target on your back, don't you?
girls in third grade are starting to get that, like, I want to be older. I want to be like,
Social, yeah.
makeup and think about the way I look. And I didn't do that. I was not really aware of that. Um, and I wouldn't have been able to play that game anyway.
Mm.
Because I'm probably like a bit neurodiverse. Like, there were a lot of like
Mm.
social cues I didn't pick up on,
Yeah,
and sort of, people would sort of say something sarcastically, and I would take it at face value.
yeah.
Um, and then as I got older, I just decided I didn't care. So
Well, that's good.
that's helped me immeasurably.
Yeah, and it's really hard. I think, especially if you do, if there are, you know, if you have issues socializing the way that other people do, it can make you really isolated, and it's very sad. And I also think, I mean, you know, considering your childhood where you were split between different places and you probably had different codes in one place and codes in the other, it must have been so complicated for you anyway, like where you were just like you had to detach in a way, you know.
Yeah, I was very malleable, which
Yes.
was I was a little bit of a chameleon.
Mm.
And I think I'm less that now. Like, when I moved to England, I thought I was going to get a British accent because a lot of people do. They sort of slip into. And
Yeah,
I'm actually shocked to find that my accent has not shifted at all. My kid's accent has, but
that must be
uh,
strange.
but back then, but I do get still a Southern accent when I talk to my parents, when I talk to my dad and my stepmom, who've got strong Southern accents. Suddenly, I'm walking out of the house and I'm like, y'all need to listen. I'm like, my whole like everything changes
Yeah.
to Southern mom. And that used to happen in the summers. Yeah, I would. It would take a few days for me to
Yeah.
adjust to the other setting.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I was similar. I think I had a strange upbringing or an upbringing that was slightly outside of the norm. My parents' values, nothing religious or anything, just ideological or whatever.
Mhm.
At school, I was definitely a chameleon, and I wasn't basically allowed to wear certain clothes. Basically, anything that involved capitalism, any pop culture,
Mm.
I wasn't really allowed to engage with it by my mum. So when I was at school, I always had to kind of pretend that I knew what was going on, and that made me. Firstly, I mean, in a similar way, I would then just go off into my mind as a retreat, but also found myself kind of being able to, or forcing me to adapt in certain situations, even though I was in probably a bit like mental pain, like, oh my god, I don't know how to behave around all of these people. So I do get that. And actually, a lot of writers, this is what they say as well. And I think that, being a chameleon helps as well. You're an actor. So when you're writing, you're putting yourself in other people's shoes and you can be very empathetic and stuff. And so at what point did this kind of maybe slight kind of isolation, but also rich kind of imaginary, the interior was very rich. Like at what point did that turn into writing, or was it always there?
It was, I never took writing seriously as my sort of future goals, but I would really, I loved to write short stories for fun and
Mm,
then for school assignments and things like that. I was a huge reader, obviously,
yeah.
especially of horror. I mean, this
Oh
was
yeah.
like
Good.
such a moment for horror. It was, the Christopher Pike and R.L. Stine and
Yeah, yeah.
uh, yeah, and I would I would do this thing. It's funny that I didn't really know I was a writer. I would do this thing where I would imagine my Academy Award speech, right?
Yeah.
But then, if I'm winning an Academy Award, then what was the role and what was the movie? And then I would come up with the
Yeah.
entire movie
Yeah.
of this award, I'm
Yeah.
a wartime villain or something. And I would have the entire 3 act structure in like an hour. But I was an actress, yeah. Yeah, it
Yeah.
took me actually going out for auditions and realizing I wasn't that great at it, and I didn't actually really like people looking at me while I played make believe to
Oh
swap
yeah.
over.
Of course.
Uh, but I was writing when I was at NYU, I was writing projects for my friends and I to be in. I did
No.
short films, and plays that we would sort of workshop. And by the time I moved out to LA, I was like, no, I'm coming out here to try to get staffed on a TV show. I want to be a writer. I don't want to be an actress.
Yeah.
And it really helped when like I would go out to clubs with my actor friends and like guys would come up to me and go, "So I assume you're an actress." And I'd go, "Actually, I'm a writer." And they would bolt. They were like, "No, you're not for me." It's great.
But
It was like very
yeah, but that makes sense. And I think especially because if you are a true, really creative, and obviously actors are very creative as well, but I guess they're in a kind of difficult position because they rely on other people to make things in order for them to get their fulfillment. And so I guess,
exactly.
and that kind of makes sense then that you were kind of like, well, actually, if I'm this is kind of uncomfortable. It's not giving me an outlet, so turn to writing and then you can make your own stuff.
So much of acting when you're not doing well is like printing off resumes and stapling them to your headshots and sending them to people. It
Yeah.
was like
Yeah, it's soul, and
not.
it is soul destroying. My family are well, many of them are actors as well, and yeah, they it's very stressful, and it's weird to see sometimes they can get a really good job, and then it's great, and then it's you don't even really get 2 weeks into it before you start creeping in. "Oh, what's the next job? When will it come?" And I think that uncertainty is difficult.
You do have that with writing as well. Like
Oh, of
you
course
do.
you do. Yeah.
I think a lot of writers go into it, me included, and you think, you've gotten your agent, you've gotten your first book deal,
Mm,
and now like you basically have a license to print books, and
yeah.
it comes as a shock. And most people, especially mid-list, mid-career authors like myself, will hit a point where you've written the
Mm,
thing that's the best thing you've ever written, and it
right.
doesn't sell. And then you've got like a couple years to sort of go, okay, am I done or am I reinventing myself here?
Yeah.
And I've been lucky to be able to reinvent, and keep going.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you do have, even though I do want to talk to you about Diavola and Loot as well. Like I know that you do lots of other. You dip your paintbrush in many different whatever those things are called. Um, yeah. So you've got
Diesel droplet. I don't know what you call that.
no, yeah, yeah, yeah. It is a palette, yeah. But I think that it's interesting that because now, especially in horror has always been quite a nerdy, thing. I mean, I know it's pretty mainstream, but as well, but people who love horror, they
Mhm.
there's a bit of a spirit of independence about it. Like there aren't, especially because there aren't necessarily. I mean, you've got like you're with Tor Nightfire. They're probably the biggest ones in horror producing, like just focusing on that kind of weird or horror speculative kind of side of things. but generally it's a lot of indie presses, and then also a lot of self-published authors, and a lot of authors in horror do come through. And I think, and you can tell me if what you think, that self-publishing is becoming less of a less stigmatized,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
yeah, and that you actually, maybe that problem of being in the middle of your career and then, like you said, something doesn't sell, and then who am I
Mhm.
wonder if you think that about, the digital age kind of actually helps maybe kind of writers just, well, fuck it, I can take it into my own hands, my destiny.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you have that mindset of being entrepreneurial enough to
Yeah.
handle all the other aspects of it and take it on yourself and really, steer it like a small business, then that's amazing. And it's a great outlet. And a lot of people are hybrid authors and are able to sort of,
Yeah.
get enough success with the self-published books that it winds up being repackaged and bought by a traditional publisher. So then you get like basically the best of both worlds.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hope.
Do you not
Um,
think of yourself as entrepreneurial?
no, no.
But you must be, because you've got a lot of ventures creatively, definitely.
They're all creative. They're all I don't want to do the cover. Oh, and I
No,
don't want
no.
to
Yeah.
I have a real I mean, I don't think I'm alone here, but I have a very ambivalent relationship towards social media and self-promotion.
Oh yeah.
It's not even ambivalent. I hate it. Like I just I despise it. I like talking about other people's books
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
myself. That's how I use
No,
social
it's
media.
cringe. Let's be honest. Promoting yourself is cringe. Like, and I know that cringe is dead, but let's be honest, it's cringe. Like, there's just something about it which just feels, well, it's impossible not to feel very self-conscious and like no one's going to care. Like,
I have author friends who are so good at it that can do the like trending audio and like somehow spin that into being about their book or their writing process.
yeah,
And I'm like, that's great. I would like to go into a cave
yeah.
and roll a big like bush in front of it so nobody can find me and just see deer for the rest of my life when I see that stuff. I would rather do that than be on trend with anything.
No, that's true. I get it. But I think, ultimately for me, and I use social media a lot, obviously. And I think that,
I feel like TikTok's different though. Like
yeah,
I like I'll post something on TikTok and then the identical thing on Instagram.
yeah.
And TikTok, like people are like laughing at what I've said. And on Instagram, they're like, "You okay, hon?" Like,
No,
okay,
exactly.
OG. Like, I'm like, this is not my place.
No, I definitely prefer TikTok. And what's so good about TikTok? I mean, it happens on other platforms, but TikTok is the best social media platform for word of mouth. And that's how books generally spread. I mean, even before social media, it is about someone recommending it to you hear about it, and it's that repetition. And I mean, I know that when your books have come out, like when I remember Diavola coming out, there were a lot of people reviewing it.
It was TikTok, it was Book Talk that made that book successful.
Yeah, fantastic.
I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah,
So
but that's what I mean. You don't actually
it
need.
doesn't get banned.
But no, exactly. God, yeah. But that's what I mean is you actually don't. Sometimes you don't need to be good at social media. If people like your book, it does it for you. And I sometimes think that it's probably better for authors to take that approach to go. It doesn't actually matter how many times really I post. It's only going to get out there if people start recommending it. It doesn't matter if I go on every day and go, "This is my book, buy my book." Then if no one's talking about it, it's not going to happen. So I don't think you should feel anything about be.
And that is the cringe actually. That is it's the feeling of that you're like a one person parade
Yeah, it
being
is.
like, hey, my book, and everyone's sort of
Someone's just
looking.
scrolled past it as soon as they've seen your
Yeah.
face. Yeah, no, it is cringe, but
Yeah.
it's okay. So like, but this is good because we're moving into an area of like being anyway a creative person, and being successful, but also being successful means you get quite a lot of feedback, and you can like choose to dial into that or not. But like, what is it like for you as someone who periodically will have to do work, release it, get feedback, get book sales, and then do it again? Is that hard, or are you okay with that?
I feel like my childhood, which we have discussed, has set
Yes.
me up well for the fact that sometimes people are really mean.
Yeah.
And honestly, not everything's going to be for everybody.
No.
Like some people really like Loot and hate Diavola and vice versa.
Mm.
Um, some people say this book was so boring, and I'm like, I know. I had to read this thing 17 times. I'm so bored with it.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes people like have these opinions that are so far off. Like somebody had described Diavola as fascist and then didn't back it up, and I was like,
No, it's just troll behavior, that.
and I tend to come across those things accidentally.
Yeah. You're
Because you see
not
little
watching the reviews come in.
there. Well, in the beginning,
Yeah, that's fine. I'm not
but before
judging.
the book comes out, I'm a little bit
It's
it sort of
exciting.
makes it feel real and make it like because it's so you're in your house, especially
Mm.
like I don't go out to bookshops to see if my book's there because I have learned the hard way that that sometimes leads to
I
crushing in
bought this
public.
in a bookshop. I bought this in London in a
Hey!
bookshop. So there you go.
Um, yeah, that's great. That's good to hear. But so it feels very virtual. Like did I write this book? Is this all
Mhm.
this elaborate dream sequence? And then seeing even when people dislike the book, it's like they bought it, they read it. This is real. I have written a book and people are reading it. I'm a real author.
Yeah.
So there's that aspect of it, like sort of checking stats, like how many people have read your book. This is not healthy behavior. And so I tend to cut it off after the book comes out and just focus on the next thing I'm working on,
Yeah,
much
that's
to my delight, so that I'm not,
yeah.
wasting all my time.
But I mean, you have been writing for quite a long time, but Diavola, it went really well. That went really
Mhm.
well. I mean,
I know.
that's a
I was so
well-loved book.
I'm so happy. You don't like you just don't you don't even you don't take it for granted. Um
Yeah.
and yeah, it's lovely. It's really nice to see that a lot of people connected with it the way that they did. Because I thought it was a fun book. I
It
really enjoyed
was.
writing it. But you never know how it's going to land.
Yeah, I mean, I want to let's talk about Diablo a little bit because what I really liked about it is obviously and I think this is true with most horror, good horror, is that it's about characters, really. Like the actual stuff that happens. And this is a creepy book, like there's no doubt about it. It is creepy. But like, at least the first half of the book is really just getting to know a family and seeing well, for me, as a middle class guy going on holiday with a family to that kind of place, I completely get it. When you're in that,
Yeah.
you can and obviously now I know a bit about your background. I can totally understand how that kind of frayed dynamic where everyone's basically just close, just kicking off, really, but holding it back and resenting everyone. What was that like to write? Was that fun?
People, I mean, the Pace family is a special kind of horrible. But I feel like there's elements of that dynamic in every family vacation. I
Yeah,
just I mean, and they're hot, they're in another country, they don't speak the language. Everybody's kind of their worst self when they should be their best selves because they're in this beautiful place.
yeah.
Uh, it is that is the fun of writing for me is having really, really vivid characters and then sort of putting them in difficult situations
Yeah.
together.
Well, that's probably just storytelling, just 101,
Mhm.
isn't it? But I think like I mean, just in the sense of like if you make a character likable or interesting and then you give them a problem, like well, for me at least, I'm like,
I'm not sure I made everyone likable in Diablo, but to me, I could understand them all.
yeah, but it's
Uh,
not, is it about being likable necessarily more than sometimes, I mean, for me in horror, there are characters that I actually want to see suffer a little bit. And I don't mean in like a sadistic way. I'm just like, it's kind of like I know why you're there and it's coming for you. Like,
yeah.
but so I didn't, it's not for me, it's not about being likable, it's just about me thinking they're real. And you think
Yes,
you achieve that.
absolutely.
Like,
Absolutely. And I like people to be funny. I like funny dialogue. Um my first drafts, especially of my horror, tend to be much heavier on the character interactions and drama and the sort of the basic kind of arc of the plot.
yeah.
And then I amplify the horror in later drafts to sort of thread it through more thoroughly. And I think it works pretty well for me. I
Yeah,
think
no.
you could probably see that in my work versus other people's that I think.
Wait,
I
did you
mean,
say, wait, did you
something
just say
it
you
feels like
think?
they're a fraud, but I do feel like I'm a little bit of a fraud of a horror author.
Yeah, but you
Um,
read horror when you were younger.
I did, and I thought that was scary, but I don't. Yeah, It takes a lot for a book to scare me actually these days.
Yeah.
And my books I don't find scary because I wrote them.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
no, no, of course. Well, exactly, of course. But I don't actually think because, by the way, I mean, okay, look, honestly, I think when I got to about halfway through, I was like, this is a really interesting like story about a family cat, and I know what's coming. And there was part of me, because I love horror, where I was kind of going, is the horror gonna hit? By the end of the book, it 100% did. I'm a seasoned horror reader. It is scary.
It's
And
good to hear.
and everyone who gets, but I think that's fine. And I think you're right. Like, not books, especially for people who read horror, we're
Mhm.
not getting scared every time we read a book. But we are getting, what we're getting is stimulated, and we're seeing the world from a different point of view.
Yes,
It's not like
exactly.
a ghost story. There are millions of ghost stories, but it's the fact that it's the way it's framed. And a lot of people have commented to me when I've spoken about this book, that it's interesting art and horror. Stephen King done it a bit. I can't remember what he did it in, but he had one where something was coming out of someone went into a painting. Can't remember what it was. But it's not really that it's not done very much, which is interesting because they,
I love the kind of intersection of beauty and decay in horror.
yeah,
The sense of something sort of decorative going wrong.
yeah,
Um, and like decadent horror.
yeah,
Like there's a lot in Diavola about like they've bought so much food and then it spoils immediately. It's this
yeah,
sort of like us. Um, and again, I like summer horror because I like the juxtaposition of
exactly.
like brightness and you're supposed to be having a great time, but there's something rotten in the underbelly of it. So I do tend to do a lot of summer horror. My next one is also it's not completely set in the summer, but most of it is. So I clearly gravitate towards that.
No, no, but that's I like that juxtaposition as well. And I
And
thought,
again, it's Nat Cassidy called it. What did he call it? Destination horror, or
yeah,
vacation horror. It's like destination horror. It's all like beautiful places that you would like to go to as a tourist, and then something like horrible happening. And then my next one is again that it's like a beautiful, huge stately home.
well, it's interesting because obviously, like Clay McLeod Chaplin says on the front, scorches the petals right off the White Lotus,
He
and
is the best at blurbs, man. He
it's
writes the
no,
best blurbs out there.
he's a
I
damn
love that.
such a good writer, and I guess like when you think about the White Lotus, like it is pretty horrific. Like
Oh yeah,
obviously it's not horror, but it's
sinister, man.
dreadful, you know?
It's very unnerving. I think that the tone of it is
Yeah.
very something's wrong, something's creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's horror adjacent, I feel like.
And I think that probably does. I guess it's true in Diavola. It's kind of true. Well, it's definitely true in White Lotus that we kind of like seeing people who seem to have it all kind of unravel and become nothing. But I think in general, like holidays are a bit disturbing. I think for a lot of people because they end, and usually you're on holiday and you're kind of like you suddenly, you have that moment where you're like, oh my god, I'm gonna have to go back, and it's like a
It's the
bit,
halfway point.
yeah,
I usually mark it. I go, oh no, it's hit me.
no.
It's that like, Sunday feeling.
Yeah, I think it's a great place to set a horror because it's like we all have this idea of holiday. We all love holidays, of course, but holidays there's many different strange things that happen on holiday. So
Oh yeah.
so it is a kind of a strange other world that you're going to anyway.
You rewrite the memory of your vacation,
Oh yeah,
and then you want to take another one, and then you get there and you're like, there's you can't pick a restaurant and everybody's fighting
I
and you're
know, I know.
airplane migraine and but you edit all that out later. You just remember the poolside like,
Yeah,
tropical trip.
and you fantasize about that until you go back again. It knows, and I think that's. I mean, for me, it kind of does the same thing as even a cabin in the woods situation. I mean, like it's just like an idea that we all understand. It's cabin in the woods is isolation, going on holiday. It's supposed to be great, but actually, it's going to be not great. And then of course, like with this book, the holiday ends, and really when you kind of get back to the main character's like real life, that's for me was when it was like this is terrifying.
Yeah.
um and
That was really important to me. And I know that's been a little bit divisive among readers that they just wanted to sort of keep it in Italy and they didn't really
no,
care about
no,
the
I
New York.
loved it.
Me, like the New York
Yeah,
sequence is everything. It's that you're not getting away from this. It's like that moment in when you have a nightmare and then you wake up and nope, it's another nightmare. Still not awake.
Yeah.
Um, I find that really scary and um, yeah, and I wanted to sort of, show the ways in which Anna can't just sort of can continue to compartmentalize all the issues within her life and her family either. She's gonna have to face it head on.
Yeah, definitely. And also the fact that, yeah, basically throughout the whole book, Anna doesn't want to be there, you know, and so it's always that there is this pull, the idea of like, just get away from the family, get away from the house, and then go back, and your safe place is corrupted, totally corrupted. And also a lot happens in that last third. It is like, obviously for people who haven't read it, but it definitely pays off in a big way. And I was laughing as well. I thought it was funny. Like throughout the book. I mean, but I love, so relatable, that last scene at her kind of ad agency where she, all of those interactions just were, that was perfect. I was like, that this happens, and this is what I want to do. I
Yeah.
I want to say what she's saying to people like in the office. Um, have you worked in an office before?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, yeah. And I think, sort of being so she's so strung out and tired at that point
yeah.
of
She's
not
losing
being able
her.
to play the nice game. Like when the client says, his father died and she goes, okay, cool. You you wish you could behave that like just let's just move on. I don't want to
No, it's so
I
good,
don't want to have
and also that thing of like, even down to like what you're like, expecting to like look good every day and come with your best ideas and be like just constantly just being used and
team
used.
player.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And of course, like in the book, it's like it's just a sense of exhaustion. I think is already start. Like I said, it's kind of already there pretty much as soon as she gets there. There's this sense of like this person is not wanting to go on a holiday in that way. They need a break, but like this isn't going to be it.
I think that a lot of horror is this like that kind of that dichotomy between the office and how you're meant to behave and sort of the truth and what she's capable of. A lot of horror deals with this sort of like social construct that we've created this like mutually agreed upon sense of normal, which is largely arbitrary. I guess it helps a lot of people feel like, comforted in some way.
Yeah.
Uh, but for a lot of us, it's not comforting. It's exhausting. And then, you send something off the rails in a deeply unnerving and upsetting way
Hmm.
that kind of tears the veil between, our accepted idea of normal and reality. And that's really satisfying in a certain way. Like you don't want the thing, you want them to triumph over the thing they're fighting. You don't want the monster to win. But
No,
at the same it feels like a good thing that the monster showed up in the first place because something needed to be disrupted.
definitely. I mean, I completely agree, and I mean, ultimately, horror is just making safe things unsafe, and you're completely right. The codes of an office and the codes of life, they're there to make us feel
Yeah.
safe, and everything's predictable. But for someone like you and someone like me, where being in an office is like, for me, it was just draining. I was felt like I was acting the whole time. I didn't understand why they wouldn't just let me get on with the work, and I had to do all the other things.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, that's just dropping by your door of your office for a chit chat.
yeah,
Oh,
just and you just develop that kind of like for me, it was sad because it felt like a switch off in my brain. When I went into work, I'd just be like, I've got to be someone different now. Okay, so I want to talk about horror, fear, feeling
man.
scared, and what did you have kind of were you scared child? Because on the one hand, you've kind of got this quite you must have quite a lot of armor to be able to kind of do what you have to do.
I was always somebody that would um try to like work through difficult emotions because I'm not that comfortable lingering in them.
Yeah.
Um so I don't tend to be somebody that holds grudges or anything like that. um, because I just don't like the way it feels. So fear for me, yeah, I would work out ways to get around it. So I used to have this elaborate, I don't think I've ever told anybody this. I used to have this elaborate daydream about like a kidnapper serial killer when I was a kid, about how I would get them to like me. Like that was my plan. I was gonna be like, yeah, I like what you're doing. I think I would also like to be a serial killer. And can you show me like how you do it? Because I'll be like your assistant, and then I would like get away. That was my plan, foolproof.
You befriend
I
them.
had I had a plan for everything. My mom would help. Like I was afraid of ghosts. So she said, "Did you?" She told me this is a really smart mom move. She goes, "If you something with ghosts is if you tell them to go away, they have to." So I was like, "Oh, done, solved, fine." If I see a ghost, I'll be like, and I don't want them to be there. I'll just go away, and then they will leave, and I'm that's set. So that's fine. That's checked off.
Life hack.
So a lot of it was like um getting like I would sort of do things that made myself scared in order to like sort of expand my sphere of courage. Courage was really, really important to me and still is. Um and yeah, so reading horror and watching horror was a way of, sort of extending the boundaries a little bit. You feel it and you've processed it and then you're braver at the end of it.
Yeah.
It's like building a muscle.
Well, that's why I think that it's actually quite useful. I mean, it's thought of horror as thought of as being not for children. And of course, there is a lot of horror that isn't for children, but it is a quite a healthy kind of thing to engage with or a way into those feelings.
Oh yeah. There's a Mr. Man book. You know the Mr. Men?
I love Mr.
Okay.
Man.
Okay. There's one that is like child's first horror and it's called Mr. Tickle. I mean, Mr. Tickle is a horror book. Like even now, he might be waiting downstairs, waiting to stretch up these impossibly long arms. It's
It's true.
that it's like it is like a fundamental building block of story for kids
Yeah.
is the scary thing. I mean, all fairy tales have a scary thing in
They
them.
are Grimm's fairy tales are grim. They are.
Yeah.
And do you remember there was one called, I can't remember, something Bluebeard, and he's a guy,
Yes.
and isn't he got a room full of dead wives?
Oh, he just piles them in there. Doesn't
That's
even bear.
it's horrendous, isn't it? Like, so it's true, but then it's weird because at some point horror does split off, even though it's something, let's say, as children that we're constantly kind of engaging with our fear in different ways and negotiating with it. Um, like there's a point at which horror stops becoming for everyone. You know,
Mhm.
there's plenty of adults that you go, "Do you like horror movies?" Like, and they'll go, "No." And
Yeah.
obviously that's maybe and they
I have friends that are like, I can't read your
yeah,
books.
and why is it why don't people enjoy horror, do you think?
Why don't people?
Yeah, why
Uh,
don't they?
I think that some people do hold on to negative emotions longer than I do. And I think for them, that sort of unsettled feeling lingers in a way that they find uncomfortable. That they can't sort of they don't feel stronger from it. They feel weaker.
Yeah,
And
no,
I I can understand that.
oh no, and it's not about going, well, everyone should love it, but it's just interesting that I think children do engage more than we think in like kind of horror fantasy
Mhm.
space when they're exploring themselves. Like, but then at some point it becomes, I'm an adult and actually this stuff just sits in me too long. It's kind
Yeah,
of
I don't know if like people feel in some ways more tender and more vulnerable as adults in a certain way. Like there's a more of a sense of, the things that I consume are going to stay there.
well,
Um,
but it's interesting because I guess like so much of life is when you fear, it's fearing things that probably won't happen. You know, and
mhm.
like for you, you're probably adrenaline inducing daydreams where you're thinking, how am I going to befriend my kidnapper and basically just charm them? And I'm like, God, I really like what you've done with the place. Like
Like
that's your way. Yeah,
that's my version of being a prepper.
yeah, exactly. But that in a kind of way is a way of facing an anxiety, and lots of people, everyone's anxious, but that is a thing, isn't it? It's like people, like, we've spent so much time worrying, but it should be quite a healthy thing. Horror helps you worry in a way that feels a bit safer, I would say, than just your day-to-day worrying.
Yeah, I think there. I think there is a little bit of a difference in kids horror versus adult, which might explain this difference where kids horror it's gonna have a happy ending. Unless it's like scary stories to tell in the dark where yeah,
Yeah.
they do die of fright by pinning their shirt to a gravestone. Um but for the most part they triumph over the monster and they come out stronger and whereas in adult horror, you're not guaranteed that happy ending.
Mm,
So you get a really bleak one like what is it, The Mist?
yeah.
And sometimes stuff like that, I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
man, like I wish I hadn't watched that. I
I
couldn't. I like happy ending horror a little bit more than I do
bleak.
existence is
Yeah.
meaningless. Like I'm like, well, okay, fine.
No,
I'm
it's not escapism in the same way
yeah.
as I think, and I think that's absolutely fine. And obviously there are people read horror and watch horror movies for all different reasons, and it is for it's a way of processing stuff, I guess, and also for a lot of people, I think that people feel quite betrayed by life, and they're like, life is shit, like, and that's
Yeah,
just
sometimes a little nihilism for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah, and I think that's what it plays into. And my argument for everyone probably benefiting a bit from reading horror is that it's all right to lean into that nihilism a bit sometimes, like
Hmm.
because otherwise it's. I mean, I don't like my entertainment just being kind of tell me a nice story to distract me from all of the things I don't want to think about at the end of the day.
Yeah. I think our own dark sides need to be acknowledged,
Yeah,
and aired out a bit, or they do become destructive in our own lives. And this is a sort of safe way for that to happen. Um, and you know, and from my perspective, as someone that is sort of cheerfully pessimistic,
yeah,
I would say I'm optimistic. I'm more just cheerfully pessimistic, like, oh yeah, the world's ending. Oh well. But seeing something that is like absolutely bleak and
yeah,
like mankind is doomed, it helps frame my worldview as counter to that in a way that's helpful. I can go,
definitely.
okay, that was an interesting story. I thought it was really effective. I don't think the world is that fucked.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And I know that about myself, and that is useful. So
Yeah,
it is read widely for that reason.
yeah, and thank God that's not me.
Yeah.
Is another absolutely
Well,
fair enough.
yeah.
But yeah, no, that's interesting. Do you find that when you're writing, you were kind of because obviously writing horror, you do have to engage with that part of yourself. Is it therapeutic for you? Do you find writing generally like working things out for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, on some level, I am very contented in myself when I have gotten the writing done, and I'm very not when I have not gotten the writing done. That might be more of sort of the frustration of the act itself, of like getting the thoughts out and
Yeah,
sort of having that flow. But there's also the aspect of sort of making fun of myself in a certain way. Like I've had people ask me who Nicole is, and if it was based on like a family member, I'm like, that's me.
yeah, yeah,
I'm the one that turned up to a family vacation with like a detailed itinerary and expected my children to be fed at 5 o'clock, and everybody sort of laughed at me.
I was eye
So
rolling hard. I'm sorry
yeah,
to
so some
say.
so some of that is just sort of like telling on myself as a form of therapy. Like I
Definitely.
ridiculous.
No, but
Um,
people respond to honesty as well. I think people know when a character feels real because it's like all that rough edge. That's
yeah.
me, or and we're also often
Kind
repel.
of all the characters, all their sort of
Yeah,
like sort of foibles, they reflect things that I can see in myself for sure, or I can at least relate to in others.
yeah,
There is a whole lot I don't relate to in others, really.
yeah. Well,
Um,
that's a great thing.
Writer.
Exactly. And also, like, because I've got this question where it's like, I think that horror generally does, or let's say people who adults who carry on, consuming horror, they often are outsiders in one form or another. And I think that, like you just saying, you can find it quite easy to kind of like tolerate or accept or whatever it is, all these differences in other people, like as a self-confessed weird kid, do you think that those two things are connected, like having this kind of sense of, having to bear the world and accepting it for what it is, even though you're weird?
I'm a pretty forgiving person. Like I tend to cut people a lot of slack. My husband makes fun of me because he's cursing at somebody that cut him off in traffic and is speeding past, and I say he really needs to go to the bathroom. Like there's to me there's a justification for, or a plausible one for most people's bad behavior. I think generally my philosophy is that life is really hard and we're all trying our
Mm,
best.
totally.
Um, but some people need a course correction because they're just being assholes. Um,
Yeah.
the outsider thing, I think maybe it's in terms of horror, it's what I mentioned before about the sort of the forceful break in normality
Yeah.
is satisfying in a way because we have not been granted access or full inclusion in that like accepted social fabric.
Mm,
So we rip it. And I mean, because there's a truth that's deeper than, civilized norms.
of course.
There's life is much richer and more complex than so your day-to-day
Yeah.
middle class boring
Yeah.
life would
Yeah. Yeah.
want you to believe. So it's great to kind of shake that up and break it and see what's underneath. And I think that outsiders have had to confront that more over the course of their life because I mean, for one thing, it is scary to get up every day,
Yeah.
to be excluded, keep going. Um,
Yeah, definitely. Not
Courage. So
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, but it's interesting how if you felt like you were kind of weren't accepted, that you have managed to, well, you probably want to accept other people, as a way of kind of accepting yourself. And like, because you can understand why someone, if they felt like I wasn't acknowledged and accepted for who I was, and so I'm going to not accept other people. But it's quite impressive that you've kind of found that within yourself.
well, I think everybody's got I mean, I think the people that are doing the bullying, there's a real hurt there.
Mm,
There's something um that doesn't feel safe about their lives that they have to bolster themselves up by denigrating other people. And um I've never had to suffer that. So in some ways their lives are a lot harder than mine was, although they tried their best to make it the other way around.
yeah.
Um I don't know. I had moments where I was not my best self as a kid, and I would, I would seize the moment to pick on somebody else to sort of
Oh,
get
of
position.
course. Yeah.
I felt very quickly like, no, this feels horrible, and I'm not going to do that. But you can sort of look at yourself and say, this is why I did that in this moment, and that's why these people are doing that as well.
I did a terrible thing once where because I was also I kind of moved schools quite a lot and didn't really know who my crowd was ever. Had a bowl
Mm.
haircut, wore corduroy trousers, you know what I mean? Like, and I once made at one school made a popularity list, and went round interviewing everyone who has got the most friends. And that was just because I didn't feel like I had any friends, and I was trying to work out how does this work? Who's friends with who? That's a terrible thing to do. And someone did say to me, like,
You were a sociologist, though.
I
You
was,
didn't realize.
but I was doing it in a very horrible way because there would be people who just didn't have, it exposed a lot of like hurtful things for people. Like, oh, that person's not my friend. But, just because when you're a child, you do that, you experiment. So I want to ask you about like, because I mean, I've already kind of get the feeling that I know what you're going to say, but there's this thing in the horror community where there's obviously a big spectrum, and you
Mhm.
said you kind of fall probably more on the end of the spectrum where it's not bleak, and there is kind of like, even though Diavola was quite bleak, I'm not going to lie, but you said it in a kind of a sunny place, you subverted that. There is this other side of horror which is called extreme horror. I don't know if you know anything about extreme
Mhm.
horror. Well, if you do, I'd like to know what you think about it being used in on that kind of. You talked about airing the darkness, and there's this thing about taboos which can be very dangerous. in if they're not talked about for people's mental health and everything, and just what you think about that it being explored in horror in that way.
I I think you have to delve into, I mean, as an author, I feel like I have to, with every book, push my own comfort zone a little bit further.
Yeah.
Um, and get into areas that make me uncomfortable, because otherwise, like, what am I doing? That's I'm writing a boring book for what
Yeah.
reason?
Yeah. Oh no, it's the storm. If you can't hear me, it's because of the storm.
Where where there's no larger question being asked, really. It's just it's just like, look how much I can break. Um, and to me, that's just sort of like smearing poop around. Do you know what I mean? Like, rather than actually grappling with things in a sort of deep or intelligent way. I've read books that have really upset me and really stuck with me. And I thought, like, in a way that I'm like, I kind of wish that I could unread that book, but I respect the book because of what it was setting out to ask and accomplished what it to me it accomplished what it set out to do. It's stuff, I mean, I think of it more in the realm of horror films, like what I prefer versus what I don't. I can't do torture porn is not for me. It's
Yeah.
just not, to me, it's mean spirited to me in a way that I don't connect with. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I think it really, really depends on the book for me.
Yeah. And by the way, you can hear me, can't you? And you can see me.
Yes, yes, yes. Sorry, did I cut out?
No, no, I did because there's a storm happening right now, and I think it kind of in London. The nice weather has come to an end, and it's just
No, 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 no.
hail.
It's gonna be really nice starting from tomorrow though.
Okay, good. But yeah, no, but I agree, and I think there are some books for me which, even though I'm a bit of an explorer, so I will read, and I've read things where I'm like, oh my, I don't want to read this. I shouldn't read this. I distrust the person who's written this. Like, like everything
It's
about,
frustrating.
yeah, where it's just too. It's yeah, go on.
You know what? Do you know what it is? Sometimes it feels like the book, like the book is making it, like, making fun of you. Like it's attacking you, that you are the victim of it. And
Yeah,
that's what I mean by mean spirited. Like the purpose of the book is to make you uncomfortable and not to achieve anything else. And that I don't like. Like,
yeah,
I'm a full ass grown up. You don't need to, like, play, like, punk me with your,
yeah.
like, extreme violence. I don't care.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's because as well, it's very new. The boundaries that are being pushed in extreme horror now is like pretty much as like depraved as it can possibly get. And but it's still
Yeah.
very new. So it's still, I think, about like, and I interview extreme horror authors as well, because I think it's important to, investigate it and go, why are you writing this? And a lot of the time, pretty much all the time, it's actually they're really talking about, I'm working out very difficult feelings for myself. And there are other people out there who also have experienced terrible hardship in their life, and this is their way of finding some agency, claiming back with the, let's say, the torture porn stuff. If people in their life, I think, have experienced an injustice, abuse that hasn't, and they felt so powerless, to read a book that is someone is who has done something bad is being hurt, I can really understand how. I mean, it's not my experience, but I can totally understand why someone else would, get some kind of gratification or catharsis from that.
Yes. Well, for a good example of that, that one film I do enjoy is the wrong word, but
Yeah.
Audition
Oh yeah,
is that's gratifying because it's the bad guy that's the victim, you know? Yeah, it's
definitely. Well, I like to think that a lot of horror is the bad guy being the victim ultimately. And I know you said earlier that it's like, it's often like not a nice ending, but like the present that you get from reading horror for me is that you're really empathizing and you're rooting for that character, even if it is a bad ending. You kind of want them to be okay, and you're kind of
Mhm.
putting yourself in their shoes. It's never I don't think it's ever, oh, I'm rooting for the bad guy in horror. Unless that's literally the point of the book where the main character is like evil. Like, I'm not reading
Yeah.
horror to see people get hurt. Like, you know?
But in some movies you are, and like that's okay as well. Like
Yeah,
you
the
are kind
movie.
of you're rooting for a body count. You're like, you're like run, but not really.
It's true, but
So there's an aspect of that as well.
yeah, but I do want to get like if I'm watching Saw, if I wasn't invested in the people escaping, then
Yes.
I wouldn't care. And I think even in films where it is, brutal and graphic, I need someone to survive. Otherwise, I'm just watching a kind of a loop of like people just getting maimed, and that's not.
Right,
So I think,
exactly.
I think that there's the perception of people who enjoy horror is you're a bit of a freak. You like seeing people being scared and hurt, and I just think that's not really what it's about, really deep
No,
down.
and some horror particularly, I mean, horror novels and horror movies are really funny. Like they're
Yeah.
the the way, I mean, there's the sort of camp aspect of it too, which I really enjoy.
Oh yeah.
Um, like you look at the progression of Evil Dead to Evil Dead 2 to Army of Darkness. I like all of them. They're like, but they're like
Yeah.
um,
And those are
so
ridiculously
yeah,
gory.
in that sense, you don't actually like, you don't feel like these people are dying. It's
No, no,
just
no. It's not
really,
real. It's not real. And I think yeah, it's just again a safe place to feel those exhilarated emotions. Those exhilarating
exactly. And that
emotions.
provides the safety, like how silly it is and how ridiculous, and you can sort of grapple with death in a certain way.
Exactly,
Uh,
because that's the thing. Is
the
like
worst thing that can happen, like the worst case scenario, is actually kind of funny.
totally, and because our sense of death in day to day life is so abstract and so confoundingly massive that it's like you don't want to think about it. But you can watch a movie where someone gets like beheaded by a vine, like twisting their head,
Right.
like and you're like, yes, that was amazing. Like, so it's quite a kind of fun way to not. Otherwise, it's just too. I think life's too bleak. Otherwise,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I want to ask you. There's just a couple more questions. But seeing as we're talking about films, like, what do you think the key difference is between writing something that's scary and or create, basically a horror movie and a book? Like, what are the differences in terms of scares?
Well, the reason horror movies scare me and books don't is the music and the sound cues. I'm
Yeah.
really auditory. So in the absence of that, I don't really get scared. But I did it as an experiment. I was reading a book. It's actually a book on blurbing, where it's a hike gone wrong. I love hikes gone wrong.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
like
They're great.
this is a really good one. But I wasn't getting that scared, and I put on like the sound effect, like one of those like nature sound effect things of like a hike
Yeah.
in the woods with footsteps and stuff, and I was like, suddenly I was freaked out, and I had to turn the music. I had to turn it off.
No, it's actually a really good point. And I think that, because audiobooks for me in my life have always been a big thing. I used to listen on tapes and stuff. But Audible people and as well as starting to accept audiobooks as being they're reading
They
a
are
book.
scary.
Yeah, they are scary, and I think they should lean more into that. I want more sound effects. I want it doesn't need to be fully dramatized, but I think that's totally fair enough to have a little bit of ambience going on in the
You
background.
ever listen to World War Z, World
I
War
haven't
Z?
listened to it. No.
Okay, so it's multicast and it's so good.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's really because you just feel like it's real. It's like you're listening to
yeah.
radio telling their account of the zombies.
No, and I love that, and I love like any distance between kind of like just making you feel part of it is so the immersion is right, and I think that's what the horror movie does. And obviously that auditory stuff is jump scares. For me, jump scares is just the music. It's not. It's the loud noise. It's not
Yeah.
the best kind. The reason why I will advocate for books being scary is the same way that I would say, there's two types of well, not jump scare, but scare in horror movies. Is the one where something suddenly happens, and another one where something is wrong and it's uncanny and it's unsettling and it's just dread creeping up to you. And I think books do that. And
Yeah.
they can, they because it's that it's kind of you and the book. if skillfully done, it gets its hooks into you in a
It
way. Yeah.
stick with me longer for
Yeah.
sure. Especially, and this is a not a fight, but this is a dialogue I have with editors often. Books scare me more when things are not explained, when
Agreed.
there's never a full and satisfying explanation for what's happened. Like uncanny fiction, especially some of the older stuff. Um, where you're sort of getting into the fae and like the
Mm,
sort of the occult, and there's never really a clear-cut explanation for what's happened. It's just sort of lingering in the background. I find that sticks with me in the way that like a dream will,
yes.
um, where you do feel like it's this memory that you haven't quite deciphered yet, that your subconscious is trying to tell you something that is true,
Yeah.
and that you urgently need to figure out, but you can't.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that really, I think is really effective in fiction,
Yes, I
and
agree.
harder to pull off in films because everything is so right, presented right in front of you. There's not a lot of sort of space in
It's
between.
true, but it's why my favorite horror film is the Blair Witch Project, because
Yes.
you
Oh
don't
my
ever
God.
you don't ever get to see the witch.
Yeah.
It's so
Scariest part of that movie is when you get that shot of the
yeah.
the him facing the wall.
So
Oh, yeah.
yeah, it's so good. And it just I love that film so much. I think it just does everything that horror. It's about the unknown. It's about just fear itself. And I mean, it's got such a
Characters
but
unraveling and picking
yeah, it
at each
is.
other.
And I think that that's true though. That's doing the same thing. It's going, you know, we're not going to show you what it is. Go into your dark heart and think, what is it? What is it to you? And I like that about books is I think, you can like in Diavola, you could I've got a picture, but it's not necessarily what I'm picturing when I'm reading it. And that's true for everyone. When you're reading a book, you're making your own movie and you
Mhm.
see things differently. And you can't fully see it. Like that's what's so good about horror for me reading it. It's like you can't fully visualize what it is, even when it's described. And it's still this
Yeah.
thing which is, and I think like maybe linking to what you said, that lingers with me more. Like
Yeah, absolutely. Well, because you feel it if you're going to fill in those details with your own memories, so it
yeah,
becomes more personal.
it
Like
does.
a house, the vacation rental house that you went to, or
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
or like a cousin you dislike. I don't know.
No, it's true, but I mean that's what I was reminded of going on those kind of holidays where you kind of there's a slight Lord of the Flies thing. I mean, I have a lovely family, and so it's not like again, it's not
Oh,
like
I
my
do too.
family's like that, but it's just like you do see it, and you're like, oh, I identify that. No, and that's what's perfect about it. Um, okay, I want to ask you three last quick questions. What? So you say so? Do you do a lot of blurbing? Like, what are you reading right now?
I would love to do more.
Yeah,
I've had so many back-to-back deadlines, but now I'm able to read some of the books that people have sent me, and it's a major perk of the job when people are
yeah,
lovely enough to send me copies. So I'm reading. It's called Broken Trail by Amanda Cassile. I can show you the arc.
yeah. Oh,
It's
nice.
quite good.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying it. So
And what
perspective
kind
going
of
wrong.
book is it? Is it a
It's a hike gone wrong, and it's a very unreliable protagonist,
very
who
nice?
right from the beginning you're like, oh dear,
Yeah, you
you
don't want to
got
be going off into the yeah.
you got some issues, and this is not going to go well for you.
No, no,
Uh,
no. That's
it's great. The dialogue's great. The characters are really believable, and I'm enjoying it a lot. It's set in British Columbia. Um,
nice.
so that's exciting.
Nice. What about TV? Do you watch TV?
I watch a lot of TV. Yeah. I sort of toggle between video games, TV, and movies. I've been on a little bit of a movie kick, but now we're watching Andor.
Oh
Finally
yeah.
catching. Love Andor.
Yeah.
That's my Star Wars. I feel like everybody's got their little
Yeah.
the core movies I've always been a little bit mystified by.
Yeah.
But Andor feels so real, and Rogue One I love. So
Rogue One, fantastic. Yeah. No, I haven't actually started Andor yet. There's so much TV to watch.
there's so much content. I know it's
So much.
overwhelming.
I mean, I love it, but then I always end up just watching the things that I really like again. I'm so bad for that. There's so much new stuff, and I love
Well,
that
this is
thing.
the thing with kids.
Yeah,
We like they're getting to the age where we can reintroduce them to stuff that we haven't watched for years, and
that's
they're old enough.
lovely.
So yeah,
That's
that's fun.
that's nice. What about video games? What do you play?
Um, I enjoyed Dragon Age Veilguard. And now I'm getting super nerdy with Baldur's Gate, which is just so good. I was never like a D&D person, but I think I might become one if I ever
Oh,
have any. The thing is, it's so time consuming. Like I really have to like clear the slate if I want to start a D&D campaign. So Baldur's Gate is my speed for now.
no, no, that's fine. I mean, but yeah, D&D, I haven't done a lot of it, but it's very fun and very whimsical. Very
hmm
whimsical thing. And it's
I'm
very,
always a rogue. I always want to be rogue. That's my
yeah,
go-to.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's my
No, 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 you should definitely do it. And finally, do you listen to music?
I do. I listen to a lot of like streaming radio. I listen to KCRW.
Yeah.
Um it has eclectic 24 and I listen to Morning Becomes Eclectic every day. I used to live in LA and it's like
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's nice.
and then I also listen to a lot of Baroque and early music because I am in a chamber choir called La Mattina Vocal Ensemble.
I
And
actually really wanted to ask you about this. Tell me about your singing.
so I'm in this awesome group that I've just sort of found my way into through a variety of connections here. I had early in my career wanted to do musical theater and I wanted to do opera, but life takes you in different directions, and I went with writing. But I get to sing this spectacular early music with this group of, I think we're 16 strong now. We've got a concert this weekend.
Oh, wow.
Um, and yeah, it's great. We've sung it in, cathedrals and festivals, and it's been really gratifying. And I've gotten some solo opportunities that have been unbelievable. Chances to sort of expand my what I thought I was capable of.
That's so
So
good.
I'm a light lyric soprano and
You're a soprano, right? Yeah.
specialize now in Baroque and early music. So that's
That's
pretty
cool.
fun.
I used to be in a choir when I was young, and when I was an alto. So
Uh-huh.
once
Yeah,
it got
that
to
one.
the point, yeah, yeah. Once it got, but I did always enjoy being alto, and I think I stuck with it before. I thought alto was more interesting than tenor. Anyway,
No, it is, and Alto's the unsung hero of choirs. I think
definitely.
the director of my choir actually, Mark, is an alto, and he jumps in for some of the ensemble pieces and sings alto because it's he
Yeah,
loves
it's
it.
usually the bit that kind of gives it the kind of the grit, a little bit of dissonance, a little bit of something, or it's like moving but subtly and it's changing things. It's not as
Like when
flashy.
it's like when you're in the ocean, you get that cool undercurrent.
Yeah,
That's the I feel like.
that's cool. Well,
Yeah.
where are you performing this weekend?
In the place I live in Minchinhampton. So at the
Nice.
Holy Trinity up here. So we better get a good turnout or I'm going to be angry with a lot of
No,
people.
I'm sure. No, but that's so cool, and that's a lovely thing to do. I would actually would love to join the choir again. One of those things that when I was doing it when I was younger, I was like, I don't want to be here. It was on a Friday
Yeah.
after school for 2.5 hours. So I
Oh,
was like, I don't want to be here after school on a Friday. But now I'd love to do it. So
yeah,
it's
all these things that I complained about when I was a kid, like long walks and,
yeah,
bird watching. Yeah, I like I and
totally.
learn things. I'm like, I would love to do these things now,
No.
sign me up.
Well, we can. We have free will. But thank you so much for talking to me. Um,
Thanks for being on here. This has been so much fun.